The 49ers have an open line of communication going with the Cleveland Browns. They at least know how to talk to the Cleveland Browns. We know this because of the Brandon Aiyuk situation last year, that there was so much discussion that the Niners were close to trading Brandon Aiyuk to the Browns, that it didn't happen. And we at least know they can work together in difficult situations. And last year, it was a difficult situation for the 49ers. This year, it's a difficult situation for the Browns. I know no one wants to hear the word leverage anymore, but Myles Garrett has quite a bit of leverage. This is Trent Williams 2.0. It's not really the Browns that you have to convince in your trade package for Myles Garrett. It's Myles Garrett. Now, the Browns can say, well, we're getting a better offer from the Steelers, or we're getting a better offer from the Commanders, or we're getting a better offer from the Cowboys. But if Myles Garrett wants to play for you, Myles Garrett gets to dictate terms. And the reason Myles Garrett gets to dictate terms is that Myles Garrett has zero guaranteed money coming to him in 2025 and 2026. Now, his cap hit is $19 million this year. In 2026, his cap hit is $20 million, but he has no guaranteed money. This means that Myles Garrett can just tell any team that he doesn't want to go to, guys, I'm not showing up without a record-breaking contract, or I'm not showing up without whatever the number, $50 million. I want $50 million this year, and then I'll show up to your team. And he can say to a team that he wants to go to, I will play for $6 million. I will play whatever he can dictate terms here. Now, the Browns don't want to look like fools, of course, but the Browns know that with Myles Garrett having basically no guaranteed money coming to him this year, that he could extend, prolong a holdout, and really make life miserable for them. They're not going to trade a Hall of Fame franchise centerpiece, still kind of in his prime, 29 years old, for nothing. So you're going to have to give him something. And the good news for them is that there's probably multiple teams that Myles Garrett's willing to play for. That's where this is different from Trent Williams 2.0, who just wanted to go play for Kyle Shanahan, and Washington had no choice. Myles Garrett probably doesn't want to go play for the Cowboys, but Commanders, sure. Chargers, sure. Packers, yeah, okay. Bills, yep. Niners, yeah. Lions, yeah. Chiefs, yeah. I mean, you have to include the Eagles anytime anybody is available. Howie Roseman. Raiders, no, I'm good. No, thanks. Giants, no, I'm good. But that list is long enough that even as Myles Garrett dictates terms to a degree, and what it really means is he can nix teams, because he can tell those teams, I'm not playing for this. I'm going to need a huge I don't want to play for you. I'm not playing for you. I'm not showing up. I'm going to hold out. And so that, the Giants will go, fine, we're just not going to bother. And so the Giants could have the best trade package, and the Browns can't do that deal. But the Niners have to be on that list, and to be on that list, what does that mean? Are you tampering? No, the beauty here is he has made a contract, or he has made a trade request. So the agent's going to be out there looking for a deal to try and make it happen. And the Browns, I think the Browns have to be somewhat incentivized, just because they know that they could probably get a very good return for him. So it's Trent Williams kind of 2.0. But the Niners have far more competition here, because there's a long list of teams that Myles Garrett should be willing to play for less money. Now, what does less money mean? Myles Garrett's not 37. This isn't his last shot at it. So does he want to come to the 49ers for less money than Nick Bosa? He's better than Nick Bosa. He's going to show up with more sacks than Nick Bosa. Although, there's a lot. He's 8 years and however many, 8 years, 102.5 sacks, so 12.8 per year. Now, Bosa is 63.5 sacks in 6 years, but it's really 5 seasons, 12.5 sacks per year, and a record-setting contract for a defensive end. So, it's one thing for Myles Garrett to go play for somebody where he's not the highest paid defensive end in the league, but he is the highest paid defensive end on that team. Is he willing to go to the Niners where he's not even the highest paid defensive end on that team? It was suggested by some people are like, well, yeah, maybe just trade. You trade Bosa. That's how you get the deal done. You trade Nick Bosa for Myles Garrett. And then you're just back in the same position you're in already with not enough pass rushers. I don't like that trade. I think Myles Garrett's better than Nick Bosa, but and he's cheaper right now, so there's a value there. You're gonna have to send a pick. That's the question. What do you have to do? You have to send a pick with Bosa, even though Garrett's older? I think yes. So I don't really think it makes a lot of sense because in the end, it doesn't make you a lot better. The only way it makes you better is if Myles Garrett wants to play for well below market value, and then you use those savings somewhere else. But I think in the end, the Niners, you kind of need both. That's the point of this. If you're going for it, you're not trading Nick Bosa for Myles Garrett and then still having to plug another hole. You're using Myles Garrett to plug a hole. So, I don't love that idea. But if you're the Niners, you have to be in on this. You have to make phone calls. Again, we know the Niners can deal with the Browns because they dealt with the Browns in very trying circumstances last year as it involved Brandon Aiyuk. You cannot involve Brandon Aiyuk in this trade. Well, what about throwing a pick in Aiyuk? Yeah, well, the Browns don't want Aiyuk now that he's hurt. So, that can't happen. By the way, you may not know this because somebody brought up, well, it's been a constant cycle of like, what about Max Crosby? Has Max Crosby kind of, silent quitting? Is that still a thing? On the Raiders, I think that Pete Carroll is going to, one of his many skills is leadership, and he's going to convince Max Crosby that, bro, you don't want to go anywhere. You want to be here with us. Raider Nation. Us against the world, man. So I don't think he's going to go anywhere. They wouldn't do that deal anyway. The Niners had it has been reported the Niners had a better trade offer for Khalil Mack than the Bears. They didn't do that deal. They don't want to do that deal, but it does remind me of one of the very, I think, little known pieces of 49ers trivia, which is who is the all-time leader in 49ers sacks history? And it's Cedric Hardman. Maybe you heard his name a few years ago when Aldon Smith broke his single season sacks record of 19. He had 19 and a half. Hardman had 18 in 14 games back in 1971. And the reason I thought of Cedric Hardman was Max Crosby. Bill Walsh had this philosophy, which, it's harder to maintain than to say, but he had this philosophy, which was no enemies. And so he worked very hard at maintaining a good relationship with Al Davis. And it helped him in 1980 when the 49ers all-time sack leader, Cedric Hardman, 108 sacks from 1970 to 1979, was being difficult for Bill. Walsh took over in 79, and the 49ers lost 14 games. Now, they felt like, we could have lost less because we played some close games, but they lost 14 games. They went 2-14. And then coming into Walsh's second year, 1980, he felt like Cedric Hardman was a distraction in his locker room. And, he was trying to turn the franchise around, and Hardman was not pulling on the rope in the same direction as everybody else, in the same direction as Walsh. So Walsh called Al Davis and said, hey, man, I got this guy, Cedric Hardman. He's got a ton of sacks. He's my all-time career sacks leader. He did not say to Al, he's a thorn in my side right now. Would you like Cedric Hardman? And Al said, yeah, I'd like Cedric Hardman. And so we traded Cedric Hardman. And the Niners, 2 years later won the Super Bowl. So he traded away a malcontent. I did not like the history of Niners Raiders trades. Well, I did not look that up before this started. I should have now that I'm into this conversation. But Al was willing to trade with Bill Walsh, but Mark Davis is not willing to trade. But anyway, if you get Myles Garrett, he'd become obviously he's not the Niners all-time sacks leader, but he would at least surpass Cedric Hardman for career sacks, probably in 6 games. So the Niners have to be in on this. There's no doubt, especially because there's this air of Myles Garrett might be willing to play for less money. And that's where you really get, that's you do that get that guy in on a Super Bowl chase, and that's where you can really get value. There's this thought in Cleveland that this is tactics by Myles Garrett, and I don't think it's tactics. Contract negotiation tactics by Myles Garrett. He saw Joe Thomas's career. Joe Thomas never made the playoffs. Myles Garrett's had 6 losing seasons in 8 years, and they're not just bad; they're toxic. So, of course, he wants to get traded before he's too old to really make an impact. He's made a ton of money. He'll make more than another ton of money, even if he's playing for less than market value, which it kind of feels like he would. And there's a bunch of teams that'd be interested. So, the teams I mentioned, Commanders, you'd have to think they're on the list. The Bills are on the list. The Packers are on the list. The Eagles are always on the list. And the Niners, damn it, you better be on the list. You have to put yourself on the list and give yourself a shot. Now, Cooper Kupp, that name came up. That's not really all that interesting. But Myles Garrett, very interesting. He hosted the Super Bowl this year. The Niners never go, quote unquote, all in 1 year. So they're never going to, totally disrupt the future. But I don't think trading the 11th pick, you're not getting Myles Garrett. You are not getting a player as impactful as Myles Garrett at 11.